I'm going to start off with a couple of jigs. You've all heard of the Irish jig. Well, there's probably about 10,000 of them. And these are 3 or 4 of them, I guess. First one is called Old Joe's Jig. And the second one is called Old Tipperary. The third one is called Garrett Barry's. Garrett Barry was an old piper back in the 19th century. And the last one is called Fraher's Jig. very much. I'm imagining you're out there to be thanked. This instrument here has 6 different reeds in it, and they're very sensitive to humidity or lack thereof, and right now they're struggling a bit, so I hope you'll excuse the odd note. I'm going to have to retune here a little bit too. It's better. So, as I said, those were some jigs, and I'm going to play a couple of reels for you now. And in Irish music, there's a lot of dance music. It's a good way to keep the spirits up, and especially in the face of adversity. But any old time, no matter what's going on, dancing is always a good idea. And so mostly in Irish dance music, there are jigs and reels. And jigs are mostly in 6/8 time, and reels are in 4/4 time. So these have a little bit of a different vibe to them, more like a train. My drones are changing again, sorry. Thank you again. If you're just tuning in, my name is Tim Britton, and these are the uilleann pipes, Irish bagpipes. And in case you haven't figured it out already, they're pumped up with this bellows that's strapped onto my right arm and strapped to my waist, and the air goes from there across a tube into the bag here, which acts as a reservoir for all the different pipes. And there are 6 pipes in this set. 2 of them are not actually functioning at the moment, but you wouldn't miss them necessarily. There's 3 drones that are all playing octaves of the same note. There we go. And we're going to have to tune them again. And this here is called the chanter. It's got a double reed in the top of it, similar to an oboe reed. And it plays the melody and does so in 2 full octaves. Normally bagpipes are limited to 1 octave, but this has 2. And normally the whole idea of a bag on a bagpipe is there to give you the ability to get a constant sound so that you don't have to stop when you take a breath. And when you've got drones going on, of course, that is a whole other level of motivation to keep it all going. But when you have a bag, you can attach lots of different pipes to it and all have them playing at the same time. And the only problem with not being able to stop the sound is that you, or rather getting the constant sound, is that you can't stop it. And unless you have a pad on your leg, in this case, this bagpipe is unique in that regard. You can stop the end of the chanter on that and close your fingers down and get what they call staccato notes, as well as getting a constant sound if you want that. The drones. That. There's a couple of other pipes here that I won't be able to demonstrate because the reeds are not working right now, but they give you chords when you hit them with your wrist while you're doing the rest of it. So sorry about not being able to do that tonight. I'm going to play a very different kind of a tune now, what they call a slow air. And the slow airs are basically instrumental versions of tunes that would be sung, and oftentimes in Gaelic, the original Irish language. And this one is an old favorite of mine. It's actually mostly in English, but the name and a few of the words in it are in Irish. And that is Astor which means essentially like dear one or love of my heart. And it's a song that's sung from the point of view of someone who's being left behind in Ireland by somebody who's leaving to come here to the States. And back in the mid-19th century, when thousands and thousands of people, hundreds of thousands of people were coming to the States from Ireland, often because of the famine that was happening there, which some people prefer to call the Irish Holocaust, at the hands of the British, who were taking all the food. There was actually plenty of food in Ireland at the time. It's just that the British had relegated to potato to be the sole source of sustenance for the Irish people, and took all the rest of their food and fed themselves with it, and left the Irish to starve when the potato blight came 2 years in a row. And millions of people died in short order, and millions more came to the States and other places around the world and to try to make a go of it elsewhere. And the idea was that the stories were that there was lots of opportunity here, and there may have been, but there was also opportunity to not excel and not, there was a whole era where there were signs in the storefronts saying Irish need not apply, meaning that if you were Irish, don't bother trying to get a job there. So very rough times, and the person who's singing the song in this case is telling the person who's leaving that they may have heard stories of good things happening in the States, but they likely weren't going to be able to benefit from those, and they should hurry back home, which of course was a very long shot in itself, because most people who left never came back because they couldn't afford to. And So they would actually hold a wake for them the night before. They called them American wakes. And it was like having a funeral for your loved ones as they were leaving in the morning on the ships. So a Sormachri, and I'll probably go into something to pick it up at the end. Well, those last two tunes were a couple of jigs. The first is called The Hag, excuse me, The Hag with the Money. And the second one is called Old Hag in the Kiln, the Old Hag in the Kiln, like something that you'd fire pots in, clay pots. Strange titles. There's a number of tunes with that feature in their names hags, and that's a kind of a loose translation for a word called kayak, which is sort of an old wise woman. So not the best translation, but anyway. I know you all want to learn to play the pipes now, and but before you get your hopes up too far, what you actually typically start out on, if you're interested in learning the pipes, is this here. It's called a penny whistle. And thankfully, it's a lot easier to play. There are no reeds in it. And it's also a lot cheaper. They used to call them penny whistles. And of course, they used to cost a penny. That was when a penny was probably worth about 20 bucks now, which is about what they cost nowadays. So this is a nice one. This costs a bit more than $20. This was made by my good old friend Michael Copeland, and maybe he'll have a chance to watch this video. Maybe he's watching it right now. He lives outside of Philadelphia. Wonderful soul and a fantastic instrument maker and musician. So I'm going to play a little tune. I'm not sure I remember the name of this. In fact, I'm quite sure that I don't at this moment. But I'm going to play it anyway. I learned it from the playing of a great flute player, whistle player, and singer named Cahill McConnell, who's from Fermanagh, which is actually where my family is from. If you go far enough back to the mid-19th century. And he's a wonderful person and a fabulous musician, and this kind of tune, I always think of him not only because I learned it from him, but it kind of reminds me of him. It's got a very childlike quality to it that I like a lot. So much. It's such a strange sensation to be performing and feel like you're performing for lots of people, then open your eyes and there's nobody there. But I know you're out there. I trust it. Just going to keep an eye on the time here. We've got just a couple more minutes before we take a little bit of a break. And maybe I will, let's see. I will do a song now. Mostly I hide behind my instruments very effectively, but occasionally I'll get my courage up to sing a song and use the best instrument of all, the human voice. And this one I'm going to sing now is called Lagan Love. It's there's a lot of different subgenres within Irish music, and one of them is songs that are considered by the cognoscenti to be kind of art songs, in that they were composed. They're sort of part of the tradition per se, but they're not part of the older, more folk tradition that was carried on primarily by in an informal setting, shall we say. And this sort of crosses that, the art songs tend to cross that boundary a bit, but they are still identified as somewhat separate. This, as I said, is called Lagan Love. Lagan is the name of a river, the River Lagan, that flows through Belfast up in the north of Ireland, among other places. And in the song, it's in English, but there is one phrase that will not make any sense to you unless I tell you about it. It's uilleann she, which is Irish for a particular kind of fairy woman who would steal the hearts of the artist types and leave them forlorn and aching for them. And in this case, the composer of the song is comparing this woman that he's fallen, that he's smitten by, to uilleann she. Where the Lagan stream sings a lullaby, there blooms a lily fair. The twilight's gleam is in her eye, the night is on her hair. And like a lovesick uilleann she hath my heart enthralled. No life I own, nor liberty, for love is Lord of all. And often when the beetle's horn hath lulled the eve to sleep, I steal unto her cabin warm, and through the door I peep. There on the cricket singing stone, she saves the bogwood fire, and hums in a sad lovesick. Sorry about that. And like a lovesick uilleann she saves the bogwood fire, and hums in a sad, sweet undertone the song of heart's desire. Tagged a couple of reels on the end there. The first of which was one of mine called The Humours of Roxboro. Composed that while riding a bus to visit a friend of mine, Mark Simos, who composed the second tune, which he called the New Year's Resolution. His resolution at the time was that he was going to give his then wife a break from his incessant tune writing by not writing any tunes for a while. And hopeless case that he was, immediately broke his resolution by composing that tune. So there you have it. I'm going to invite Mendy back on the stage to say a few words about one of the reasons why we're here. One of the many reasons. Why don't you come on up here, Mendy? Thanks so much for hosting us here.
So I hope that you're enjoying yourself. Not only are you enjoying wonderful music, beautiful instruments, and some education. Pretty great. So what I want to remind you is that these kinds of things don't happen without the help and support of our sponsors, our donors, and our friends. There's lots of options to make that happen and to make sure that this music continues, as well as we can all come back and enjoy this amazing facility and this wonderful theater. If you could hear his instruments echo in here, it's quite amazing. Your support now is, of course, even more important than normal. With our doors still being closed and trying to see what our future looks like and when we can reopen and in what context, our revenue is, of course, quite down. We want you to make sure and support instruments and music and education in ways that your center is here to do. We are still a vital community asset. We are still doing those blood drives that are much needed as able, and we are here to make sure that every asset and every need is met. Now, I mentioned this in the first live, which seems so far away ago. Congress is helping you to make a difference in the center. Part of the CARES Act this year allows each individual to donate $300 to a nonprofit like us and receive a tax break. Married couples can do $600. Now that doesn't mean you have to even itemize to do that. Now if you do itemize, they have increased those rates, those thresholds, so that you can still donate that money to us, and then in April, get a nice tax break. So keep that in mind. Now, as I've said, you can text. When you text that FACC live to the 44321, you will be sent a secure link. Click that link and follow the directions. Tomorrow I will be posting on our Facebook page pictures from my phone of how that works, what it looks like, and what those options are. So if you have any questions, please call the center at 472-2000 and call extension 104, and I would be happy to walk you through it. If that doesn't meet your needs, you can donate through PayPal, you can donate through our website, or you can just mail us a check. We will take anything, and we truly appreciate all of the support. As we look to the future and we look to our next artist series and what that looks like, we need you. We need you to make sure that we are here, so when your life gets back to where you need it, you can come here and we can make sure that you smile again. Now, my friend Tim has lots of great things coming up, so I hope that you can make a donation or help out in any way that you can. And my friend Tim is back.
Thank you, Mendy. This day and age, there's so much free content available on the internet and everywhere else that I think people forget that there are real people behind all this. And there's a lot at stake, and there's a lot of investment, obviously, that goes into making the arts available to be able to be consumed by us all. And I know all about what happens behind the scenes, since I'm in the business of producing concerts myself, not just as a performer. So anyway, thank you, Mendy, and thanks to the Sondheim Center and the Fairfield Arts and Convention Center, and also to the individuals, again, that have been helping us out tonight and every Thursday night. Jesse, the house sound man, and Jason, who is with FMC, Fairfield Media Center. I see his arm raised militantly from the back. Is that like Jason's Lives Matter? Is that Jason's Life Matters? That's what it is. It does matter, and I think that, sorry about that, bad joke. Yeah, Jason's life does matter, and your donations support things like Jason's Life. And Werner Elmker also has been donating his time tirelessly, and it's a wonderful thing. Let's see. I think what I'm going to do next, actually, rather than play the pipes again, is I'm going to play this flute here. This is an old wooden flute. This one was made around 1841, and I had the great fortune of running across this in 1976 in Ireland. This is typical of the what would be the normal classical standard instrument back in the 1840s, and this one was designed by kind of the hot young flute star of the time in England, at least, a guy named Joseph Richardson, and he collaborated with a great flute maker named Thomas Prowse in London to come up with this particular design. And I actually have a little certificate signed by both of them that was in the lid of this the case for this. And when I got it, it looked like it had been made the day before rather than 150 years earlier. Anyway, I'm probably going to play another slow air for you, and this particular one is called, what is it called? I'm blanking out right now, but I'll get to it. But what I really want to say is that I'm going to dedicate this particular tune, set of tunes, to a very, very old friend of mine that I've known since I was 4, I believe, or maybe 3. I met him at a wonderful event called Fox Hollow Folk Festival up in Petersburg, New York, right on the border of Vermont and New York and Massachusetts, right where they all meet in the corner there. And it was really a magical event, and this man was part of that magic, and he just passed on yesterday morning. A wonderful, iconic figure named Kevin Henry, originally from Sligo, County Sligo in Ireland, and settled in Chicago many, many years ago, and has been a bastion of the Irish music community in Chicago ever since, which is saying a lot because there's, I think Chicago is the largest community of Irish people outside of Ireland. So there's a huge Irish music community there, and he was absolutely at the center of it for 60 years. And that's pretty impressive. And well, he should be. He didn't seize that position through dint of will. He simply attracted it, and that he was such a huge-hearted man and a wonderful musician, of course, but played flute, pipes, was a wonderful storyteller, and one of my favorite things is hearing him do these long recitations that are a tradition in Irish culture where they might go on for 10, 15, 20 minutes even, all in rhythm and rhyme, and these extended kind of epic poems that would tell a story of something or other, and he was full of them, and just great images of him at 3 in the morning at some party after the concerts, and him holding forth, and just a wonderful soul. So this goes out to Kevin Henry, and I'll think of this, the name of this tune in a minute, but might as well play it first. thanks, Kevin, for inspiring us for so many years. I'm going to finish up with something that's a little unusual. You all know the Scottish bagpipes. Well, mostly, I would imagine, you know them in the context of people marching down the street, playing them in bands with drums, and it's all very militaristic, and that's all a wonderful thing. And ironically, that was the idea of pipe bands was all started by the British Army, and in Queen Victoria's time, she became very enamored with all things Scottish, and it became fashionable to play Scottish music and wear the kilt and the tartan and things like that. Now this is particularly ironic because it was not terribly much earlier, about 100 and some years earlier, that the Scottish bagpipes and wearing the kilt, the tartan, all that, and the language was outlawed at the point of sword and by the British. So in any case, prior to that time, the main music of the bagpipe in Scotland was something called pibrocht, which literally just means piping, which is some indication of how dominant it was in the scene as opposed to the marches that you mostly hear these days. Pibrocht is a very unusual thing. It's very slow and meditative, and it goes through starts with a very, very simple, what they call urlar, or ground melody, that really sinks very deep into the notes and the way they blend with the drones, and then goes through a series of progressively complicated variations that get more and more rhythmic and more complex in their fingerings and everything, and their embellishments. And it sort of climaxes at a certain point and then returns to that ground melody again. And I'd like to play you a little bit of one. I'm going to just go out with this tune. It's called Cronan the Chailachs of Benbrick, and it means the lullaby of the old woman of Benbrick. And Benbrick is a place, and the old woman of Benbrick evidently is a reference to an ancient deer goddess. So it's quite an interesting thing. The pibrochs were primarily composed about 300 to 500 years ago, and I get the impression from this one, it's a somewhat unusual one in the name and everything, that maybe it's actually older than that and predates the form pibroch altogether, and maybe it was actually sung before it was played. So thank you again so much for joining me here, or wherever you are. And thanks again to the crew, Jason and Jesse and Werner, and to Mendy and the others who are behind the scenes at the Fairfield Arts and Convention Center. And please do make generous donations to keep them afloat here. And thank you for asking me to play. And it'll take me a moment to tune up probably, so but that's all part of it. So here goes nothing, as they say.